So we are going to talk today about autonomous driving in the spotlight. For industry insiders, the challenge of autonomous driving is ever present. But as the title of this panel suggests, it's in the spotlight and with good reason. In the US, we've got Tesla continuing to frustrate NHTSA and the NTSB with its autopilot and full self-driving systems. In San Francisco, GM's Cruise division has been forced to halt operations after a horrific crash with a pedestrian. And the company's 50% drop in valuation came shortly after Apple's Project Titan was pulled. So autonomous cars are in the spotlight, and one of the reasons is that they're being tested on public roads, and public reaction has been, I would say, reactionary. It's even led to an entirely new verb being coined called coning, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, shortly. But I wanted to start with a poll for the audience. So if we can bring the first poll up, please. Should autonomous vehicles be tested on public roads? Coming up on the screen there. So yes, any roads, but only with at least one safety driver on board, or any roads without a safety driver on board, but with remote monitoring, specific roads only, but with clear warnings to other road users, or no, public roads are not a laboratory for testing AVs. Okay. So it's looking like a safety driver on board will keep our panelist companies happy when they're testing. So we'll come and talk to each of our panelists in a moment. But I think it's important to note that if this were a room full of San Franciscans, the answer might be very different from if it's in a room full of industry insiders. So we've got experts on stage here from 4 companies that have not been mentioned in my introduction. There we've got Torsten Gollewski from ZF, Sascha Meyer from MOIA, Duong-Van from Panasonic, and Daniel from Uber. So let's start with you, Torsten. We first met in 2018. You were talking all about autonomous tech for trucks, and you had a shuttle business that you were looking to promote. Things have changed a little bit. Tell us what ZF's role is in autonomous driving now.
So we are still working on autonomous systems and autonomous software. Especially in trucking, it's very important. Don't forget that autonomous driving in trucking is not a technical feature. It's an economic factor. Because we need to secure our logistical chains, and we are going to see a huge gap of drivers. And I think it's important that we have that technology in our hand in order to be competitive also from the economic perspective for the future. So currently I can't see honestly a European approach. I think that is necessary. Yeah? If you just read the article today in the FAZ, I think that brings it to the point. And I think we need to start also leaving the station with the train in Europe, but honestly I can't see it at the moment. And maybe to just refer a little bit on a question here. So autonomous driving is not only a passenger car topic. I think it's at least the passenger car topic. And this shows the topic of trust. Do you trust the system in your passenger car? And we currently see that there's a lot of work to do. And that's the reason why we probably see in the passenger car industry more L2 plus approach. Just remember, every Lufthansa pilot is a L2 plus system, not an L3 system.
Right.
But for trucking, it's, as I said, an economic factor, and for mobility solutions of the future, and that's why those 2 gentlemen are here. Yeah. It's also a key technology, and that's what we need to keep in mind.
Okay, well, thank you. Sascha, MOIA is already operating as a driver-driven service, now exploring the use of autonomous technology. You have 2 roles. You're CEO of MOIA, but you're also involved in Volkswagen's autonomous technology. MOIA is a VW subsidiary, and it was using Argo systems. Obviously, Argo was unable to, or at least Argo shareholders were unable to see a business case for autonomous. So how would autonomous work with MOIA?
Yeah, what we are going to provide is the fleet management solution, also the passenger management, so everything that is required to actually bring an autonomous vehicle into operation in various business cases. So what we operate in Hamburg is more or less our test operation. So we built this fleet of 500 vehicles to actually test, understand the whole business model, identify where are the crucial points that you need to automate also in the operations, not only in the driving tasks. And that's what we bring to the table. Together with Volkswagen, we are building the ID. Buzz AD vehicle, and that's a from ground up rebuild model of the ID. Buzz as you know it today. So with all the requirements built in from the German legislation on autonomous driving, so redundant braking, steering, redundant energy supply. So everything that is required from that rather harsh legal requirements here in Germany. And this vehicle, we currently collaborate with Mobileye as our partner to bring this into the European and to the North American market. We are making quite huge progress because we are operating the vehicles in Munich, Hamburg, also Austin, Texas. And we're currently ramping up from tenth of vehicle in each city to more or less up in 30, 40 vehicles per city over the course of this year, and launch a closed user group testing in each of those locations.
And Daniel, Uber until a few years ago was testing autonomous vehicle technology, had good reason to pull out. Now you're sitting on a stage talking about autonomous tech again. So tell us, how does autonomous fit into Uber's plans?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having us in the first place. So we as Uber are the largest combined mobility and delivery platform of its kind in the world. So we serve around 150 million users every month, work with 7 million driver and courier partners. So basically anything that affects mobility as a whole is relevant for us, and we want to and frankly need to drive transition and adoption of new technologies. This includes electrification for sure, but also autonomous vehicles for sure. And we've been working since 2015 to do this, to bring safe, reliable, autonomous technology to our platform. We had a bit of a shift of strategy, as you mentioned, in around 2020, where we focused a little bit on the things we do best, which is building out our platform and making that work, and then working with best-in-class technology developers to bring their vehicles and technology on our platform. And that's what we've been doing. So right now, autonomous tech is already available on our platform. We're working with leading companies in that space to bring that technology to our consumers. We have pilots ongoing throughout the world. In the mobility space, for example, we're working with Waymo. We're now in the test area in Phoenix. You can basically get matched to a driverless Waymo vehicle when you order a vehicle on the Uber platform. And we have similar pilots also in the delivery space, where basically our partners put delivery robots onto our platform in pilot phases now. So these are the first steps we're taking towards that. Obviously, as you said, safety is utmost importance to us. So everything we do centers around safety. So we're being really careful with this, really selective with the partners we work with, and then taking a very comprehensive also safety approach with them. But overall, it's a really exciting place. And we think with the value prop we have as a one-stop shop, basically with this access to this global platform around mobility delivery, we're in a unique position to be the best platform for AV operators in the future.
I mean, obviously, one of the big things about Uber is obviously convenience for the users, but another thing is being able to be an Uber driver. So what happens to Uber drivers if you start adopting autonomous?
Oh, that's a great question, super relevant, of course. So there's no doubt in my mind that for the next 10 years, in 10 years' time, there will be a lot more human drivers and couriers on our platform than today, as well as autonomous vehicles. So obviously, autonomous vehicles will increasingly be important for our services, but it won't come overnight, right? So there are a lot of routes, a lot of services won't be able to be served by autonomous vehicles for the foreseeable future. So basically, when you add autonomous vehicles or delivery robots to our platform today, it basically means you intensify the reliability of a network. So you bring more reliability on network, which then brings more human consumers and also drivers then to our platform. And that's going to continue for a long time. So to be an end-to-end mobility and delivery network that we want to be, we basically need to scale and help bring more drivers, both human drivers and autonomous vehicles to our platform to make the platform work overall.
Okay. Duong-Van, Panasonic's well known as a consumer brand. It's also known in the auto industry as a supplier of batteries for EVs. What does Panasonic do in autonomous? Why are you on stage here with us today?
Yeah, so frankly, the Panasonic entered the game of autonomous driving a little bit late. Now we just started at the end of 2019, 2020 when we tried the project. You might heard from the media about the Tokyo Olympic project when we tried to move the passengers just from A to B autonomously within the stadium, and that is the first thing that we try. Still, like we are the mass manufacturing area who try to build more or less the hardware devices. So we still focus on, let's say, high computing unit, sensors, and try to do some ingredients which support the autonomous driving. We are not doing the whole system. Like we are trying to build the autonomous parking, autonomous braking, and such functionality to deliver to the OEM, and they decide which kind of level of autonomy they try to do it.
Okay, thank you. So we're talking about progress, we're talking about challenges, and we're talking about the future in this panel. Obviously, there was going to be questions from the audience as well, but one of the things I think is really interesting is trying to justify the business case. I mean, we talked about Argo. It was worth 12 point something billion in 2022, and now it doesn't exist. We've seen Apple pull out of its efforts to develop a car. Motional and Aptiv are changing their strategy as well, and we've seen Cruise's valuation halve. So how do we get from where we are, which is developing technology, to an actual credible business case that can excite shareholders and prevent the sort of concern that they might be showing? Sascha, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that the chunk of autonomous vehicles as a whole business model is more or less too large to be swallowed by just one company. Even if you have the deepest pockets in the market, you're not likely to be able to afford to own the overall value chain from the SDS through the vehicle with all its components, through the operation to the customer. So I think the way moving forward, and that's the state that we perceive in the industry, is more or less to think about clever configurations on how to collaborate in more or less a frenemy model. So if we look into the European market, I think a role of the public transport operators has been so far neglected in understanding what can be the potential if we apply autonomous vehicles in such a market that already has all the infrastructure capabilities, that has access to funding from public agencies. And that's exactly our approach that we take in Europe, to collaborate with the cities and the public transport operators to move forward. I think in the US it's quite a different approach that we see from being like jack of all trades, doing everything. I think the example on Phoenix between Waymo and Uber is exactly what we will see in the industry moving forward. I think the missing piece actually is as a scalable vehicle platform, and that's why Volkswagen is invested in this space, and also why we take the partnering approach to say we bring not a full stack vehicle, we bring a perfect capable vehicle that is intelligent with all the necessary components, and we add SDS systems from proven suppliers, and we are going to market that in different platforms around the world. So that's exactly why we take this partnership approach to come up with a scalable platform that will help the industry to get to a sustainable business model.
And Torsten, you've moved from working on a vehicle to supplying the components for an autonomous vehicle. Talk about some of the, maybe not the companies that you're working with, but where do you see that technology being best applied? You mentioned commercial, for example.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are three key success factors for a viable business case in autonomous driving. First of all, the driver needs to be taken out. As long as the driver is in, your business case will definitely not work.
Right.
And second thing is from the AD components. If you look on what we see currently in the market on sensors on high computing platforms with 5 up to 20 high performance computers to run the virtual driver software, then you need to come to a second success factor, which means taking economies of scale out of volume business so that your total cost of ownership of the business drop. And the third question is safety. And I think that is a challenging task because it's about what Sascha also mentioned, level 4 redundancy in braking and steering, but as well as in the scenarios. As long as you do not manage to cover road friction, for example, you probably get surprised by icy roads or something like that. and that is a safety case. And I can immediately tell you at least 5 to 7 scenarios. Oncoming traffic, for example, is one of the key points which you need to solve, which there is currently no solution for that scenario. As long as that is the case, your business case is also not working. So we have 3 challenges. And I think if we solve that, and that needs a common approach, a very progressive approach, then this could work. But even if what we see in the market, that is still a long way to go. But as I said, I think the most important thing is, and that's coming back to your question on commercial vehicles, if you can take out a driver from commercial vehicles, you reduce at least 60 to 70% of the costs. And at the end, you will anyhow not find the drivers. So autonomous driving, there the business case is done, I would say. That's the most promising one, in my point of view.
Duong-Van, you're coming into this market or this technology area a lot later than other companies, so you've had an opportunity to watch what mistakes have been made, which technologies have worked and which have not. So what are you seeing from your perspective?
Yeah, so we see a lot of worry just recently about all the news that you see from US. But actually the progress is already really great from my perspective, because I started my PhD or study in robotics, and it took us like 45 years to make a demo. You see the demo from DARPA Challenge 2005, 2007. It's the first time we can move from A to B to a desert. It's not a complicated San Francisco. And that takes about 40 to 45 years. And within from 2015 to up to now, we have made a great step. So from observation point of view, it's a great step from hardware, software, everything. But of course, from the company like Panasonic, we always need to struggle or to think deeply that, because nowadays the development of autonomous driving and the development for the normal ADAS is quite different. And the main problem for such a tier 1 is how can you commonize them a bit so that you can scale them? Because if you put a lot of money to develop autonomous driving with a lot of good sensors like a robotics ways, and then you could not use them in ADAS, which are using low-cost sensor and very cheap thing, and then at the end, this is a little bit gambling. It's good, bad, or it might be successful at the end, but it took too long time. And in the business, you want the cash flow, you want the money running back. So that is usually the case that we still struggle to find the path. How to make it business use case and how to scale from basic function up to advanced and autonomous function. This is the most difficult question we have to answer.
And there was a question on there about specific sensors and so on that Panasonic's making.
Yeah, we are providing all kind of sensors, ultrasonic sensor, camera sensors, radar. We did not provide LiDAR. No, it's because we still, such company, we are trying to think of something really mass production. LiDAR is the price still quite challenging for us to think of. Yeah.
Okay. Daniel, Uber knows only too well the importance of getting the sentiments just right, particularly after an incident happens, and you've got to come back cautiously and you've got to respond carefully to public reaction to what's happened. We talked about coning, this idea of putting street cones on the top of vehicle bonnets in order to stop those vehicles from being able to drive. Getting the messaging is just right. How are you at Uber approaching that now?
On autonomous vehicles?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, carefully, I would say. Yeah. So as you said, certainly any real-world company, we have a lot of experience about how things get adopted, I would say. And also with the shift towards this approach that I mentioned earlier, I think it just comes a lot of consciousness about safety being the main priority, right? So I think, again, I mentioned this already, so we're really careful about the partners we work with. We're more than anything focusing on also this comprehensive approach of how to make it work step by step. And I would say what is important is that I think there was some question here as well, or also regarding to the survey you had. I think it's important to also marry that with the real world, right? So that's why I'm super excited personally about this Waymo cooperation we have now, because everything works in the lab, as you said, and differently than on the street, and then just taking it really carefully, but connected to real-world use cases, I think, is what you can do, and then just be really conscious that you need to gain the trust of the customer to really make this a viable option for them.
So we've talked about messaging, we've talked about business case, and we've talked about the technology, but one of the questions that really is pressing in this area is the regulatory issues and the compliance. What are the most urgent legal regulatory issues regarding AVs? I mean, we could talk all day about that, but should we just go along the line and just pick out your favorites?
Yeah, I think my favorite issue is harmonization, because we look into harmonization. Yeah, it's a plethora of different requirements that you have to fulfill, which creates pressure on the individual business cases of each and every player in the value chain, because no one has the security to actually invest with the confidence that he knows once I reach this specific mark, I'll be able to continue, I'll be able to scale, I'll be able to earn profit. And I think that's why harmonization across the board is really relevant to move forward.
Torsten?
I couldn't agree more, because if you have to make different applications for each and every market, your business case anyhow struggles on validation costs. But we need to have a clear view on homologation and how the process is looking like. It's not only homologating the vehicle, autonomous driving vehicle, it's also homologating the infrastructure environment for autonomous driving. And I think there is some way to go. We make a good approach in Germany, and hopefully we can get it to the European legislation as well, I think that's the first start. But we need to have a common view on homologation, at least in Europe, because just imagine if you have to do a homologation for 27 countries, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think taking a step back, for me, it does feel like just more what is needed, a little bit more motivation to solve the issues there on the regulatory front. So I definitely feel like there's other issues that take more like top of mind. Also, for example, one thing that's currently certainly a priority for regulatory stakeholders is the topic of electrification, where, by the way, also the regulations today don't make it exactly easy to actually implement in the real world for our partners in the mobility space. But certainly there's other regions where there's more happening on the autonomous vehicle front than here. My hope is that we also don't have to start from scratch, right? So there's a lot of experiences and data insights that we are generated elsewhere, and I really hope that the relevant stakeholders here will also take those into account, so that we don't have to start with a blank slate of paper at some point.
Duong-Van?
Yeah, actually, the regulation is really a big thing to think about, because we need something in place so that it's not a shock. Because that reminds me the topic of UAV, the helicopter. It's kind of helicopter driving in the northwest of Germany. I remember like 25 years ago, you have such a flying drones and have a laser scanning the terrains, the grounds, to say, oh God, is the ground up and down. And it go like that for 10 years. And suddenly, I remember my professor told me that he was making that project, but there's no regulation, anything. And suddenly, boom, there's one crash, and it hit to the village. And then they banned that for minimum 10 years. There's no drone, nothing. And they will just simply ban it. This banning just simply because there's so strong reaction from society, and it's forced them to do it. So that's a little bit scaring me when seeing some news just coming recently, because we are still missing a lot of regulation. The regulation we copy or we bring from let's say traditional automotive, that's fine. But we need to make something that is workable for autonomous driving. It's not like at the end it will be another shock, and there will be maybe some decision making happen, and it's not favoring the technology at all at the end.
There's long been predictions that you would have a wide number of companies trying to make a success of autonomous driving, that ultimately there'd be consolidation, that there would be some companies that fall by the wayside, others that succeed. In terms of getting this technology not just onto the road, but actually in mainstream use. What more do you see is going to either needs to happen or will happen in order to speed things up? I mean, speed is probably a difficult term to use because, you know, tech startups like to move fast and break things, but we're talking about people's lives here, and we're talking about not just the people in the vehicles, but all the other road users. So there's a question about gaining speed on AD and developing AD. What do you think is likely to happen to get from where we are now to the next step?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it's quite necessary that the SDS providers that we currently see with, I would say, reached base camp. So if there's also the question on the maturity of players, I think can all agree that Waymo has come quite far in proving the technology and also the roadworthiness of their stack. I think the key question that we need to tackle as an industry is to understand how we can create the collaboration and how we can come to a fair share of liability in this model. Because Waymo and all the others, they will need car providers, and for that they need to collaborate with OEMs in the given environment. And an OEM will require to have sort of an open book policy to understand what is going on in this vehicle. How can we validate the self-driving system? How can we actually take the liability once we bring this into the market, no matter what the application is? And for that, I think we will need to improve in the industry to share this understanding from both sides. So what is the tech aspect of the business? How can we make that open for OEMs to understand that the validation is given and that it's a reliable solution that we can actually bring into the market?
Torsten?
I think what is, if I take the question of acquisitions here and further alliances, I think it's more in the area of M&A and so on. So what we currently see in the market is big players. Waymo was already mentioned, Cruise struggling with some safety topics. I think we will see consolidation as well. But I think what is, beside what could be a possible M&A activity in that area, I can tell you without alliances and without collaboration, it will not work.
Right.
So if something is sure, then that is the case. And as I said in my statement at the beginning, I think we need to think about it in Europe. What is our alliance, our approach, in order to speed up in AD in an increasingly geopolitical, struggling area, and therefore we need to come to further alliances. That's my point I want to make here. And it's hard to predict what M&A activities will happen, but without alliances, it will not work. Right. AD is too complex, and we see a lot of companies struggling. Apple is pulling back, and so on. So, alliances is the way to go.
Well, Daniel, that's all you've talked about is alliances, right?
Yeah, 100% agree to what Sascha and Torsten said. So collaboration is the key, and I think just from we also went through a learning process there. So back in the days with this typical San Francisco spirit, you said we also thought we could do it all ourselves, so developing the tech ourselves. And now I think the much more sensible approach that we have now is to say we focus on what we can do best, and then we work with the right partners who can focus on what they do best. And then as a group, with the right partners, with the right collaboration models, we can build the best solution for consumers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Additional to that, I'm thinking about the ODD. We need to have a clear definitions about in which case the vehicle work, which case not. That is, I think it's very, very important nowadays because there's many companies overcommitted to whatever they can do, and you know that will create a problem of trust of the societies, and recently that might really slow down a lot whatever the step we want to go further. So I think maybe the business use case connected to the very clear ODD, the definition of use cases, it can work and make it really work. Then this might really help to speed up the progress of the AD.
Okay. We've got a question there. Which are the most mature players when it comes to AD? Now, you may not want to talk about other companies, but perhaps we could take that slightly differently and talk about which areas of, or which applications are most mature for autonomous driving, whether that's commercial, whether it's pass car. Do you want to go first?
Yes, yes. Okay, so
by the way, if you want to name some companies.
No, I will, but not to name it. Yeah, but actually, let me put it this way. So in the driving, we have the high-speed driving that we follow the Autobahn, and we have the low-speed maneuvering when we work inside a city and some confined area, like parking and so on. So actually, to make it the easiest one or the most friendly one for the developer would be the Autobahn, because the scene doesn't change. Everything is just repeated and very look nicely. It will work most of the time, but actually the fidelity is the highest. No? If anything happens, then done. So that's why it's so that is also a difficult question. Which one we should allow it? Because for me, the low-speed maneuvering is too complicated. You can expect so many obstacles, so many behavior from the people. It's so challenging, but at the end, the fidelity is not that so high. You get some. Maybe there's some accident, but the fidelity is not so high. So that is a tricky thing to really say which one we should focus more. But I think at least for truck business, it's straightforward. If we have a lane, independent lane, and so on, it would be quite straightforward to exploit the business there. For low-speed maneuvering, I think there's some advanced function like autonomous parking, autonomous reversing, memory function that you might hear from the previous presenters. That I think some advanced function is what we are looking for or we are expecting in the coming years.
Daniel, I've kind of assumed that you're here talking about delivering passengers.
Yeah.
But are you looking at other applications as well?
Yeah, of course. Like, so in the delivery space, basically the simple use case is you have like an autonomous robot that does the delivery for you. So we have pilots in that in the States and also in Asia with the companies like Surf Robotics and Cartkin. I mean, for us, who are the most mature players, again, it comes down to what exactly, as you said, like what area you look at. For us, in terms of like the overall platform, certainly we believe we are the best destination for that. And then, I mean, I'll leave the technical things maybe to the experts, but I feel our ambition is to work with the leading players in that space. So I think our selection of partners also shows a little bit where we think things stand right now. Yeah.
Torsten, where do you see?
Two or 3 points. So first of all, I think it's important to define the ODD. So as some of you might know, we are operating an autonomous shuttle since 20 years for public transportation without a safety driver on a dedicated route in Rotterdam. And with that experience, you probably will also know, even if it's that dedicated route, if you have to deal with Netherlands bicycle drivers, you know what a dedicated route really is. But it's a restricted area. It's a restricted route, and I think there are a lot of ODDs which are already possible and mature where you can go for autonomous. Think about harbors. Think about depots or something like that. Parcel delivery or cargo delivery is also something where you probably can put away some safety issues, because for the tomatoes, it's not important how fast you brake. For the passengers, especially in public transportation, you even have a limit. You cannot brake more than 3.2 meter per square second in order to not to endanger the people. So ODD is one thing. The other thing is the maturity of the system components. And whenever I look onto a Waymo vehicle, I'm asking myself the question: how are they argued that on automotive-graded components in front of Nizza? Because I see a lot of LiDARs, and I do not definitely know everything of the system. But I think maturity also starts with the component you make the system of. And in these two things, I think, is the first step you need to make in order to get to more maturity. And then level 4 braking and steering is also important, redundancy on that. You mentioned highway driving, or at least autonomous driving on highways. Just think about your system is not going to make it. One of the most often I hear that we make a safe stop. Can you make a safe stop? And if you do not have a spare lane, you probably get in conflict with a 40-ton truck behind you. So you need to have at least the energy in the vehicle, the capability of the vehicle to drive to the next exit, which is a very challenging task. Yeah?
Right.
And that all comes to the topic, is it mature?
Okay, Sascha.
Yeah, so when we speak about the application where it's mature for the US, for me it's pretty obvious that the market is moving into the ride-hail business, so providing taxi-like services, and it will happen in selected cities due to the cost to bring up the operation, to invest into the vehicles, to get all the system up and running, including the operations part in the background. It's absolutely obvious that you need to aim for a high-profit market, and that's taxi services. For Europe, I think we will see a different approach in mobility services. I think from a regulatory point of view, cities will likely request operators to start in suburban areas and provide more or less feeder services to their existing public transport network. So as an addition to the existing network, and I think that will also be a very important factor for the acceptance within cities, because we can prove that there is an application of this technology which can serve the common good, and it's not only for profit. And I think that will actually drive the acceptance also from a regulatory point of view. If we speak about transport of goods, then for me it's quite clear that the biggest challenge in delivery is actually the last meters from curb to the actual consumer. And so far what we see, I think the willingness to actually of consumers to come down, pick up food, pick up groceries, whatever, will be quite limited. So from our perspective, it will more or less be a tool first applied in hub-to-hub services, so providing feeder services for parcel.
So there's so much more that we need to talk about. There are so many more questions that we should have addressed, many more questions that I'd like to put to you all, but we've only got 30 seconds left. So with that in mind, I think we'll just bring this session to a close now. Thank you very much to our panelists for sharing their insight, and thank you.
Thank you, Martin.